Inojin's blood violently splattered across the ground as Jura's lethal blade pierced his chest right in front of Himawari's paralyzed eyes. You definitely never imagined that Konoha's sweetest little girl would be the trigger for the most terrifying calamity the ninja world has ever seen, turning her father's glorious legacy into an absolute curse. The question hammering in your head right now is how the heir of the sun became a living nightmare, corrupting the sacred beast in a bloodbath of hatred. For you to understand the insane gravity of this total collapse, we need to rewind the tape a few minutes, exactly to when the invasion of the fearsome divine trees turned the peaceful village into a literal shinobi slaughterhouse. The atmosphere on the battlefield was so heavy and suffocating, loaded with such a brutal and dense chakra, that Jura's mere presence made the stone ground crack beneath the warrior's feet. Himawari was desperately trying to be the last beacon of hope on that shattered front line, pushing her tiny physical limits to the absolute extreme, to channel the emerging energy of the fox dwelling inside her. The big issue, which you quickly realize, is that the colossal power gap was just utterly unfair, and every desperate strike she threw was repelled by the villain with a terrifying and humiliating boredom. Seeing clearly that his old master's beloved daughter would be completely obliterated by the next attack, Inojin ignored every logical survival instinct a tactical ninja is strictly supposed to keep in that extreme situation. Throwing his own fragile body in front of that relentless monster, he knew his ink defenses would be useless, but his sole mission in life was making sure the Uzumaki heir survived at any cost. The horrendous sound of that lethal impact was the most grotesque and sickening thing the battlefield had ever heard, a deep, wet crunch that echoed straight into Himawari's shattered soul, paralyzing the breath of everyone watching. The girl fell to her knees on the stained dirt, watching her partner's body slowly topple over as the light faded from his eyes, carving a painful trauma that broke her childish mind into irreversible pieces. Deep down in the girl's completely crushed subconscious, the little Kurama desperately tried to act, offering waves of gentle, healing chakra to soothe that shredded heart. But the human pain was just too toxic. Instead of assimilating the fox's vital energy, Himawari's tearing, dark grief began to brutally distort the beast's very nature, poisoning the golden power with a boiling black despair. That was definitely no longer the harmonious partnership of friendship you got used to seeing in Naruto's legendary journey, but a forced and macabre fusion where the host started devouring the tailed beast's consciousness. The air around Himawari instantly turned freezing and dense, drying up the vegetation in a terrifying radius, while a blood-red aura began violently and irrationally overflowing from her pores. The girl's once delicate body started slowly levitating inches above the stained ground, entirely engulfed in a cloak of chakra so caustic it melted the nearby rocks, emitting an agonizing sound that resembled the cries of trapped souls. Even the impassive Jura, who boasted an unshakable arrogance until that exact millisecond, took a tense step back upon sensing that the anomaly emerging there defied all logical and biological laws of the ninja world. From the corrupted heir's hunched back, the traditional tails made of pure hatred started sprouting at a grotesque and repulsive speed, tearing the air with sonic whips that violently destabilized the gravity of the surrounding terrain. But the absurd detail that made your heart race with terror was the unthinkable manifestation of an 11th scorching chakra appendage, cementing a monstrous anomaly that history books claimed to be impossible. The suffocating spiritual pressure of that newborn creature was so crushing that Konoha's sky darkened instantly, replacing the daylight with a chaotic storm of crimson lightning that heralded the absolute end of everything. Himawari raised her face mechanically, but the affectionate eyes you knew had been entirely swallowed by a hollow, predatory darkness, locking her deadly target exclusively on the divine tree clone. A deafening, bestial roar ripped through the heavy clouds as the 11-tailed beast channeled a black-tailed beast bomb the colossal size of a mountain, ready to wipe absolutely everything off the map along with its hated enemy. The unfathomable power vibrating in the girl about to fire that lethal attack forced the very barrier of space to audibly crack, leaving you holding your breath to find out who will be the true victim of this relentless extermination. The firing of that corrupted black-tailed beast bomb was such an absurdly cataclysmic event that you would feel the ground shake miles away, swallowing Konoha's landscape in a dome of pure, blistering destruction. Jura tried to summon gigantic roots from the divine tree to block the frontal impact, but the density of Himawari's chakra simply pulverized the defense like paper, sweeping the villain backward in a torrent of scarlet flames. The smoking crater that opened up on the battlefield exuded an infernal, toxic heat, revealing the true level of insanity this new transformation demanded from the Uzumaki heir's fragile body. Every step the 11-tailed beast took instantly melted the rocks, leaving a trail of bubbling magma as the girl advanced in a completely robotic and predatory manner, hunting the life traces of the surviving Shinju clones. The other monsters spawned by the divine tree attempted a coordinated attack by jumping at the girl's back, but you quickly realized the 11th tail possessed a cruel and totally independent consciousness, acting like a viper made of pure spiritual malice. The bizarre appendage whipped the air at a speed imperceptible to normal eyes, piercing the clones' chests before they could even cast any kind of defensive ninjutsu. Those beings that once represented the peak of despair for the ninja world were being brutally shredded and devoured by Himawari's corrosive aura, bizarrely reversing the roles of prey and predator. The girl's blood-red chakra acted like a fulminating poison that neutralized the wood-style's natural regeneration, forcing the monsters to howl in pain as they slowly disintegrated under the weight of that crushing force. Watching his own army get reduced to ashes in the blink of an eye, Jura felt for the first time in his hollow existence the bitter and freezing taste of absolute terror pulsing in his sap-filled veins. He desperately tried to focus a condensed attack aiming at the girl's blind spot, but the gravitational pressure radiating from Kurama's fury simply crushed the jutsu in midair, proving that the power gap was incalculable. It was at this exact moment of unbridled chaos that Kawaki landed heavily on the edge of the crater, his eyes widening as he witnessed the uncontrollable monstrosity his beloved adopted sister had turned into. Guilt instantly corroded the young warrior's soul, mixing with an urgent desperation to save the single drop of innocence still left in his troubled life, whatever the cost, and risking his own skin. Activating the maximum level of his karma without hesitating for a single second, Kawaki materialized dozens of black rods in a risky attempt to immobilize the beast's frantic movements. Betting everything on the precision of his strikes, he fired the stakes, intending to pin the flaming tails to the melted ground, begging out loud for Himawari to listen to his anguished screams and regain her sanity before her own body collapsed. But the tragedy you are witnessing here is that the girl's humanity had already been completely submerged in an ocean of irreversible hatred, rendering her brother's desperate words mere irritating, meaningless noise. The girl did not even turn her face to look at him, merely letting out a terrifying guttural sound as the 11th tail repelled the rods with disturbing ease, shattering the Otsutsuki vessel's main weapon into 1,000 pieces. The beast's retaliation was so absurdly fast and violent that Kawaki did not have the physical time to activate the Sukuna Hikona ocular ability, failing miserably to shrink or absorb the lethal impact hurtling his way. The scorching appendage struck the warrior's chest with the force of a runaway meteor, snapping multiple ribs with a sickening crack that echoed through the valley, launching his body against the charred ruins of Konoha's wall. Coughing up an alarming amount of blood and feeling his vision quickly darken, Kawaki realized with absolute dread that the energy flowing from the girl was something devastating and vastly superior to any anomaly he had ever faced. The mutation born from deep grief had broken the biological chains of chakra, forging a destructive force that could not be sealed or erased by the normal laws governing his karma's mysterious powers. Dragging herself slowly toward her fallen brother with the clear intent of delivering the final blow, Himawari raised a massive claw of condensed energy, ready to tear Kawaki's heart out and end his life once and for all. The deathly silence dominating the battlefield signaled that there was no hope or salvation left, trapping you in a suffocating agony as you realized the perfect tragedy was just a millisecond away from happening. However, at the exact instant the claw of death swung violently down to decapitate the defenseless boy, a beam of light as fast as thunder crossed the devastated landscape, intercepting the lethal strike barehanded and stopping the unstoppable blow. A familiar figure slowly emerged from that thick cloud of dust and toxic smoke, wearing a serene look that hides Konoha's greatest secret, bringing to light an unbelievable revelation that will completely change everything you think you know about this war. The beam of light that cleared the thick dust from the crater revealed the imposing figure of Boruto catching the monstrous claw with just one hand, displaying a mystical calmness that absurdly contrasted with the scorching chaos around him. You can barely process how the most hunted rogue in the ninja world is withstanding the corrosive heat of that energy, keeping his eyes locked on his hate-consumed sister while a serene blue aura begins pulsing around his marked body. The beast roared with instinctive fury at having its mercy blow interrupted so abruptly, trying to channel even more of that venomous chakra to melt the bones of the intruder who dared step in its way. But the surprise that will give you absolute goosebumps happens when Boruto does not even blink at the excruciating pain, smiling gently as his open palm begins to resonate at an incredibly familiar frequency, connecting his own spirit to the macabre anomaly of that lone 11th tail. That massive plot twist that absolutely shifts your whole perspective on the story blows up when the young Uzumaki realizes that extra appendage was not a mutation of pure darkness, but rather the unshakable will of fire of the 7th Hokage fighting from the inside out. It was Naruto's very life essence, preserved in the family's deep spiritual bond, desperately trying to purify his daughter's grief and heal the trauma that had shattered the fox's seal, crying out for a spark of hope that only Boruto could provide. Taking advantage of that millisecond of intense emotional distraction between the siblings, Jura stealthily emerged from the ashes of the battlefield with his body partially regenerated, molding an ultra-dense wooden spear with the cowardly intention of impaling both of them at once. That moment of pure tension takes your breath away, as the lethal attack traveled through the air at an unstoppable sonic speed, aiming exactly at the blonde hero's blind spot while he remained focused on soothing his beloved little girl's shattered mind. Without needing to look away from his sister's stained face for a single fleeting instant, Boruto simply unleashed the latent power of his own karma, in perfect sync with the Jogan, creating a gravitational push that obliterated Jura's spear with a terrifying snap. The sonic boom of this passive defense generated a monumental shockwave that swept the toxic air from the entire region, opening the perfect window for the warrior to channel all his vital energy straight into the pulsing core of that miraculous 11th tail. When the perfect resonance between Boruto's void chakra and his father's spark of divine light reached its absolute peak, the corrosive blood red covering Himawari's body began to splinter like old glass, giving way to an extremely warm and comforting golden glow. You watch in fascination as the unbelievable transformation of that nightmare creature into a true angel of pure life energy unfolds, dispelling the dark clouds suffocating Konoha and bathing the ruins in a sublime light that brought an indescribable sense of peace to anyone breathing that air. This colossal wave of healing did not just permanently soothe the tormented soul of the mini Kurama. It flowed organically and intelligently across the destroyed battlefield, converging like a golden river straight into Inogen's sprawled, lifeless body amidst the rubble. The miracle that leaves your jaw on the floor becomes undeniably real as the edges of that fatal wound begin to close at a surreal speed, filling the pierced organs with pure life force and bringing the boy's heartbeat back with a dramatic, breathtaking gasp. The purifying light rescuing the precious lives of Konoha's allies acted as a lethal and completely unbearable poison for the creatures born from the divine tree's dark distortion, engulfing Jura in a shining torrent that burned every cell of his wooden body with indescribable pain. The villain desperately tried to retreat and merge into the cracked ground to escape the impending judgment tearing his flesh apart. But the Uzumaki family's welcoming energy tracked the evil right to its root, corroding that monster's existence so absolutely that not even ashes were left to tell the tale. The agonizing final scream of the divine tree's leader echoed and quickly died in the renewed winds of the Stone Valley, permanently erasing the brutal threat that had brought the entire ninja world to its knees just hours ago, leaving no trace of his arrogant presence to haunt tomorrow. The landscape that was melting in boiling magma and pure toxicity was now blooming surreally under the wonderful residual effect of that golden light, bringing green grass and vibrant life back to the charred soil in a visual spectacle that washes your soul after so much built-up tension in this script. With the threat totally wiped off the map and the weight of grief permanently lifted from her childish heart, the colossal protective chakra dome softly dissipated into the cool morning air, allowing Himawari to collapse completely exhausted but absolutely safe and wrapped in her beloved older brother's protective arms. The desperate crying escaping the girl's trembling lips was now nothing but pure relief and extreme physical fatigue, bathing Boruto's chest with tears of sincere joy as she heard Inogen's weak coughing as he sat up dazed a few feet away, confirming that the worst trial of their lives had finally come to an end. Watching this entire spine-chilling spectacle while sitting on the dusty rocks and clutching his own heavily wounded chest, Kawaki processed the absurd magnitude of what had just happened right before his eyes, swallowing hard as he realized that true strength to protect people does not lie in empty hatred. The unbreakable promise of peace was definitively and gloriously restored over the fallen gates of the great village of Konoha, closing this dark chapter of history with the absolute certainty that the will of fire inherited from Naruto will never be extinguished, even facing the most insane enemies a merciless fate might send. If you loved all this insane adrenaline that chilled you to the bone, and you want to see more epic stories blowing your mind, smash that heavy like button down below, and subscribe right now so you do not miss the next scripts. There is another incredible video popping up on your screen right now on the channel, so click it and let's keep the chat going over there. Big hug, and see you next time.